The Shyvana rework has reached live servers, and after being a 56% win rate champion on day one, Riot has already issued a ton of hotfix nerfs, so we'll be covering that and much more in today's video as we provide you guys with an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role. And remember, if you're learning new tech, broken builds, or macro and wave control strategies from videos like this one, you're already behind. The issue with YouTube is that it takes a while for us to edit and get content out for you guys as fast as possible. That's why whenever our challenger players discover new tech, broken builds, or game-winning strategies, they post it immediately in our new meta updates course weeks before you'll ever see it on YouTube, Reddit, or TikTok, so you can get ahead of everyone else. As a SkillCapped subscriber, you're also getting access to our newly updated Essentials courses covering everything you need to master Season 16 from fundamentals to advanced macro. Or even our Bronze to Diamond series where we document hard-stuck players using only our content to climb through every rank. And if that wasn't enough already, every single week our challenger players upload 10 full game commentaries breaking down exactly how to carry games on your chosen champion in your elo, explaining every decision in real time. Best of all, you can get access to all this and more completely risk-free, as if you don't climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, then you get every penny back. Check out the link in the description below for an exclusive one-time discount completely risk-free today. So one of the bigger winners up in the top lane for 26.6 has been Tryndamere. It was a base attack speed buff that he received, which doesn't seem that crazy on paper, but considering Tryndamere's damage is entirely based on his auto attack damage, it's a pretty significant buff. The best way to play Tryndamere this season is actually a lot different than in previous seasons, as you take Hail of Blades for the Keystone rune instead of Lethal Tempo. The reason Hail of Blades works so well is because the build you are running doesn't involve any attack speed, as it's an Essence Reaver Rush into Infinity Edge second and Cyrilda's Grudge third. So you just deal a ton of upfront burst with this setup, which gives Tryndamere a lot more viability, as he can dive in and quickly burst out his squishy champion before the enemy team can react and CC him, to where he can then become a lot more difficult to pilot in fights. So for Tryndamere's tier list placement, we're going to be giving him an additional push into the S tier, as the buff has landed really impactful. So for the top lane tier list in 26.6, we've got Singed, Ornn, and Garen locking down the OP tier. Worth noting is that the Shyvana rework has not turned her into a viable top laner. Shyvana currently sits around a 40% win rate as a top laner, so if you actually care about your elo, then it's probably best to stay away from her in the top lane. Besides Tryndamere receiving a buff, Olaf was the one other top lane champ who was changed for this patch, and the changes resulted in around a 1% win rate boost. Riot actually ended up sneaking in 2 more hotfix buffs for Olaf midway through the patch, and he's now knocking on the door of OP tier because of them. On top of the attack speed buff, Q changes, and E nerf, Riot has buffed Olaf's Q damage by 10 at all ranks and increased his Q monster damage by 10 at all ranks as well. So Olaf was already in the S tier prior to this change, so if any of the current OP tier champs get nerfed in the coming patches, he'll be next in line to move up. The Skarner buffs this patch were potentially looking like they could add some viability to the champ as a top laner, with mana cost on Q going down a ton and Q damage going up, but that has not been the case. Top lane Skarner has seen a bit of a play rate spike as a top laner, but he's still performing very poorly, so we won't even be adding him to the tier list. Alright, so the big ticket change in 26.6 was of course the rework to Shyvana, and it's been an absolute roller coaster in terms of her power, with her being live for a few days. Shyvana's clear is looking incredibly strong after the rework, capable of achieving first clears as quick as 2 minutes and 32 seconds, which even gives you time to gank before Scuttle Crab when replicated. And to make sure your clear is as fast as humanly possible, we've already uploaded our complete clear guide for Shyvana, so whether you're starting blue, red, or even raptors, you'll know the exact damage thresholds you need to leash camps together, and all of the other small tips, tricks, and details you need to shave serious time off your clear. Here at SkillCapped, we enlist the help of world record holding junglers to teach you the fastest clears possible for your chosen champion before they ever go viral. So check them all out today using the link in the description or pinned comment below. On the first day of the patch, Shyvana shipped in an incredibly OP spot, holding a win rate up above 56%, which prompted Riot to immediately take action and issue hotfix nerfs. Here's what Riot nerfed if you haven't seen the changes floating around already. Passive armor and magic resist per stack is down from 0.4 to 0.3. Q on hit cooldown reduction has been lowered from 1.25 to 1 second. Q passive max health damage, bonus AD and AP scaling has been lowered. W heal and dragon form is down from 100 scaling to 250 to 75 scaling to 200. E base damage per rank is down by 10, and the bonus AD ratio dropped from 50 to 35%. E slow has been nerfed as well by 10% at all ranks. And then lastly, R fear duration has been reduced from 1 to 0.75 seconds. So with these changes being pushed to live servers, Shyvana's win rate plummeted almost 10%. The more advanced stats for Shyvana jungle are really interesting right now because she's dominating in the lower elos, but absolutely sucks in the higher ranks. Shyvana's win rate in ranks diamond and above is hovering around 42%, but if you look at her performance in bronze, silver, and gold, she's up above 50%. So it looks like we may have ourselves a very low elo skewed champion, which is more or less what Shyvana already was before her rework. Since we do cater our tier list ratings more so based on champion viability in diamond and below, we will be rating Shyvana in the B tier for now, but this is an instance where having a dedicated low elo and high elo tier list would come in handy. For your build type on Shyvana jungle, the most consistent setup so far is actually the same one that became meta prior to her rework, with a Kraken Slayer rush into Dusk and Dawn 2nd and Sundered Sky 3rd. When running this specific build, you'll want to couple it with Press the Attack for Keystone Rune, because when you have the Dusk and Dawn completed, you'll be proccing PTA in one less auto. AP Bruiser Shyvana is actually performing incredibly well too, so it looks like playing her AD with a Q max or AP with an E max are both viable right now. For the AP Bruiser build, you will still take Dusk and Dawn as a core item, but Riftmaker 2nd and Liandry's 3rd round out the core, while Conqueror will be for the Keystone Rune. So other than the Shyvana rework, we had Shen and Zehen nerfs, while Skarner got buffed in 26.6. The Shen nerfs barely hurt the champion at all, so he's still a great S tier pick, while the Zehen nerfs did have a greater negative effect, so he's now being moved down into the jungle B tier. We've got Shyvana rated in the B tier for now, as she's definitely more of an underwhelming pick after the hotfix changes went through. If this were a high elo specific tier list, then she would even be in C tier, so the champ just isn't worth playing right now unless you're in the lower elos. We'd recommend you wait for a buff in 26.7, because it would be really odd for Riot to leave Shyvana in this weak of a state immediately after releasing her. Definitely check out our guide that we uploaded last week if you're picking up Shyvana for the first time, as you'll learn everything you need to know to get started. As for Skarner, buffs have turned out quite impactful for jungle, as the champion is back in a good spot for solo queue for the first time in a long time. We've seen around a 2% boost in win rate from the changes, which is more than enough to propel Skarner out of the jungle B tier and into A for 26.6. For the mid lane tier list in 26.6, we're going to be placing Ahri back in the OP tier, as the nerf really didn't land all that bad at all, and she's still being played at a really high rate, so no reason to bump her down. Lissandra changes have landed net positive, with the champion gaining around 1% win rate, so we've now got Lissandra up in the S tier. Liss is a really solid counter to most melee mids in solo queue, and even better now that her Q cooldown is shorter, so that she can constantly poke them during lane. Azir buffs may have been the most impactful changes this patch in terms of win rate boost for a champion, but we have to remember that Azir was sitting below a 42% win rate in 26.5. In 26.6, he's now up around 46%, so the buffs helped a lot, but relative to all other mid lane champs for solo queue, he's still a weak C tier pick. Riot decided to completely ignore ADC in 26.6, as there were no changes issued for the role, which means Jinx and Xayah will continue to be rated above all else in the OP tier. We made a meta update video a few weeks ago talking about how Hubris is a really underrated item after its buff, and it has actually started to see more play since then, but it's still relatively underrated on a few ADCs. Draven is the champion who's been taking it the most, and is definitely most underrated on him, but Jhin and Misfortune are two ADCs who remain quite underrated with Hubris. If you want to play Lethality Jhin or Misfortune, then building Hubris as your rush item is what you should be doing right now. Hubris is just such a good solo queue item, because if you get that one kill in lane, then the snowball potential you have is massive, as you just get stronger and stronger the more kills you acquire due to the Hubris passive, which helps to close out games easier. Smolder is one other ADC who's super sleeper with Hubris, as it was meta on him in the past and is performing very well right now, but very few players are picking it up. You go Hubris into Essence Reaver and Fire Cannon, so you're definitely a bit more squishy due to lacking a Spear of Shojin in your core, so the build can work best in games where you're paired with an Enchanter support. And then for support in 26.6, we had just one champion who received a nerf, and it was Pyke. The nerf was to Pyke's base armor, and it's panned out as expected, with the pick losing a bit over 1% win rate, so our pre-patch tier list prediction of Pyke falling down into the B tier has played out. Support as a whole did get a nice buff for this patch though, with the gold penalty for killing minions now kicking in a bit later on than before. Pre 5 minutes, you are now able to kill 24 minions before the penalty kicks in, whereas before it was only 7, and post 5 minutes you can now kill 6 minions per minute instead of 4. Mage supports definitely benefit the most from this, because throughout the game they can help their team clear waves, and just taking farm in general as a mage support in the later stages of the game is something you'll want to do if all of your teammates are at max items. It's actually getting out of hand right now as to how much Nami is being picked in meta. Her play rate in games ranked plat and above has jumped to 18% in 26.6, up from 15% last patch. To see a support champion at an 18% play rate is just absurd, considering there are so many unique supports that you can choose from. For instance, ADC has way less champions to choose from, so you'd expect for the role to have a few champions with really high play rates, but even for ADC right now, Caitlyn as the most played ADC has a lower play rate than Nami. So we'll see how long this drags out, because Riot has been really reluctant to nerf Nami over the past year, but if her play rate stays at above 18%, then they've got to do something just for the sake of making the meta more interesting. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone. 26.6 was a very small patch, so not a whole lot to update, but nevertheless, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.